also learn more about everyone. A Chag Sameach and Am Yisrael Chai.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
We're welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. Every election cycle, they say this is the most important election ever. But yes, this is one of the most important, probably the most important election we'll face in a lifetime. We're going to be exploring as to where the Jewish community should be voting. Jerry Goldfeder joined us. I know him for so many years. I think he's the top election lawyer in New York State. He's been over 40 years doing this. He serves as director of the Fordham Law School's Voting Rights and Democracy Project, chairs the New York State Bar Association Voting Rights and Democracy Task Force, serves on the New York City Bar Association Rule of Law Task Force, and acts as special advisor to the American Bar Association's Election Law Committee. He was recently appointed to the prestigious American Bar Association's Task Force for Democracy. He joins us, as does former Assemblyman Dov Hikind, who was a Democrat, now a Republican. He has a group fighting anti-Semitism, Americans Against Anti-Semitism. He also has a billboard campaign where in Pennsylvania they're putting up billboards telling voters to vote for Donald Trump. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Zev, it's great to be with you.
Good, and thank you. I know it's holidays, so good holiday, good year to you too. Before I get to the elections, I was just curious, Jerry. I know you're a top lawyer in New York, and you write about election issues. How is this current situation regarding the mayor? What's the current status legally, and what do you see happening?
Well, everybody knows he's been indicted. And the indictment is a very dramatic set of facts, or I should say allegations. You know, an indictment is only one side of the story. It's the prosecutors, the U.S. attorneys' story, their narrative about what they claim he has done and what crimes he has committed. We haven't heard his side of the story yet. It doesn't look great to be indicted, obviously. It's not a good position to be in, but he'll have his day in court. His lawyers have already moved to dismiss some of the allegations against him, and that will go through the courts in due time. He has insisted, even though there's been calls for his removal or his resignation, he insists he's going to stay in office. He's going to fight the indictment and continue to serve as mayor. I think we can take him at his word on that. The other point is not only is he being called to resign, but there's also been calls for the governor to remove him. In New York, the governor has the authority to remove public officials, whether it's mayor or county offices or appointed people and so on. The New York Constitution and the Public Offices Law allows it. But the governor can only bring charges and serve whoever they're trying to remove, in this case the mayor, with a set of charges. And of course, that person has the ability and the opportunity to defend themselves. There's really set out a real due process, set of rights of due process for that person. The last time the governor of the state of New York has attempted to remove a mayor was in 1932, when then Governor Franklin Roosevelt brought removal proceedings against then Mayor Jimmy Walker. There had been a legislative investigation, and he was found corrupt, and there was a recommendation that he should be removed from office. And Governor Roosevelt had a hearing and presented him with charges, and Jimmy Walker testified and called witnesses. Roosevelt allowed him to bring in whatever kind of witnesses he wanted to do. He wanted to bring in whatever documents he needed to show the governor in order to defend himself. And but in the end, Jimmy Walker decided to resign. So, in fact, we've not had a governor remove a mayor. The difference here is Adams has been indicted. Jimmy Walker was never indicted. There was a legislative hearing that made a report, but he was never indicted. Here, because Adams is indicted, if the governor decides that she wants to remove him, which I'm not sure she would want to do anyway, but if she decided to do that, his lawyers will probably tell him not to testify, not to present his side of the story. After all, he needs to defend himself in court, and it would be foolhardy for him to start testifying to the governor what his defenses might be. So I think it's not a practical solution. So here we have calls for his removal. I don't think it's going to happen. Calls for his resignation. I don't think it's going to happen. But if I'm wrong on this point, and there is a resignation or removal before next March 26th, if there is a vacancy before that date, and the reason I'm saying that date is it has to do with the timeline of elections and so on. Then there's a vacancy. Then there's a special election. Public advocate Jumaane Williams would become acting mayor, calls a special election. And in the special election in New York, it's not a primary, so anybody could run and everybody could vote. It's a nonpartisan situation. But I don't think that's going to happen. So I think we're in a situation, the long and short of it, is that despite the fact of calls for his resignation or removal, his insistence on staying in office, trying to do his job, cleaning house, which apparently he's doing, and fighting the charges in court, I think that's where we are at this point. And, of course, he is going to run for re-election in next June's primary, which is going to be an extremely crowded primary because we already have people who have announced who are going to run against him. And it remains to be seen whether he can prevail.
I guess the jury's out, then we'll find out soon enough. But thank you for sharing that. So getting now to the remaining that we're looking tonight, because this is an important election, and you can have very clear choices. Now, the Jewish vote is going to be interesting. From what I see, the polls show that the Orthodox vote will go 90% in that vicinity towards voting for Donald Trump. The non-Orthodox vote around the country, I believe it's going to be, you're going to see it could be 55, 60% could vote for Kamala Harris and the Democrats. So what many Jews are saying is that there's a difference in tone from the vice president and how she's treating Israel and the prime minister. So they're concerned about the change if in administration, if she becomes elected president, it's going to be different for the Jewish community, different for Israel. So many people are saying, why vote for her? Even some Democrats are saying, let's vote for the Republicans this time. Let's vote for Donald Trump because of Israel. I want to get your perspective. You're a supporter of Israel. You're a proud member of the Jewish community. Do you believe that Jews should vote for Kamala Harris for president?
Are you asking me or the assemblyman?
I'm asking you.
Absolutely. And I think you're wrong about the figures. I think the Jewish community writ large will vote for the Democratic candidate, in this case, Kamala Harris, around 78%, just like we have done in every cycle. There's always this issue that's raised about what's good for the Jewish community. And there is a difference between obviously the Orthodox community and the conservative, reform, etc. Community. But I think that the Jewish community, whether you're Orthodox or Reform or whatever you are, or even if you're unaffiliated, we Jews have the same interests as every other American in one important regard, which is the choice here is between a normal candidate and someone who has pledged to disrespect the Constitution, who will eliminate the rule of law in the United States, who has demonstrated his absolute disregard for the rule of law while he was president, and certainly during this campaign, to such a degree that there are hundreds of Republicans who are supporting Kamala Harris. But more importantly, there are people who have worked closely with him, military people, members of his cabinet, who say, do not trust this man. He is not good for the United States of America. He doesn't believe in the Constitution. He doesn't believe in the rule of law. They have gone so far as to say that he's a fascist. Well, whatever the characterization is, there is no question that Donald Trump, if he's in office again, this republic of ours, which is so important, our democratic institutions, which are so important to all Americans, including and maybe especially to the Jewish community, they will be really at risk. And one final
more at risk than when he was 4 years he's president. These things didn't happen. Now all of a sudden it's going to happen.
It's not that it's all of a sudden. He's actually, if you pay attention to the way he has conducted himself, he's a lot different than he was when he was in office. When he was in office, he was not very respectful of people. He was not very respectful of the rule of law. But he's really developed a disregard of the rule of law even more in the last 4 years. All you need to do is listen to him. All you need to do is watch his rallies, listen to what he is saying. He doesn't seem to really have any kind of respect for the rule of law and our Constitution. And look, this is important for communities such as ours. The reason we are able to thrive in the United States is because we have had a pluralist country where the rule of law is respected. Whatever you think about specific policies of economics or specific policies of immigration or whatnot, we can debate that from now until the cows come home. But there's a fundamental difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the sense of what kind of leader they would be and what it means for the fabric, the laws and the norms of this country. I believe that the Jewish community needs to understand, and I think most of us do, that when one is living in a society that doesn't respect law, we are at risk. And we can't ignore that.
I'm going to let the Dov Hikind respond, but it seems to me that people are saying that the Department of Justice was politicized to go after Donald Trump in a capricious manner.
That's nonsense.
I'm just telling you, including Alan Dershowitz, who's a respected jurist.
He may be respected, and I'll let Dov talk in a second. This Justice Department has gone after Hunter Biden. This Justice Department has gone after Eric Adams. This Justice Department has gone after Robert Menendez, all Democrats. So don't tell me this bull mindset that this Justice Department is going after Trump for politics. Merrick Garland is not a political person in the sense that William Barr was when he was Attorney General under Donald Trump. It's a red herring that you raise, or that Trump raises.
Well, Alan Dershowitz is certainly a respected legal expert, so he says that another legal expert said it, so you can't just discount it. He certainly knows the law.
He may know the law, but I tell you something, Alan Dershowitz is not as respectable as he used to be, because he's really he sees everything through a prism of supporting Donald Trump. And either you're an objective legal analyst or you're not. He's not any longer.
Let me let Dov respond. Go ahead, Dov.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I listen very closely to what Donald Trump says, and not always very excited about the things that he says, and some of the things he says bother me. Nonetheless, there is no other choice for the Jewish community that is concerned about the well-being and the future of Israel than to vote for Donald Trump. It's a non-brainer. I mean, the idea that what has happened over the past year with regard to Israel, I mean, that is, to me, one of the most critical issues, the well-being of Israel, the relationship between the United States and Israel. And the war against Hamas would have been over a long time ago, if not for the Biden-Harris administration. There's no question about that. The leaks from the State Department, Defense Department, the White House, unnamed sources criticizing, undermining the elected representative of the people of Israel, which is Bibi Netanyahu. I mean, you got to be pretty dumb and blind not to see what this administration has tried to do to make Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, the boogeyman, the bad guy, the guy who doesn't want peace. I mean, you got to be pretty not honest with yourself not to realize that the Democrats, the Democratic Party, is so desperate to win this election, and they're going to lose. They are going to lose the White House. But they're so desperate that if it means stabbing Israel in the back. By the way, have you read the latest report of the top secret documents that happen to appear in the public domain? Documents from our government that relate to plans relating to Israel attacking Iran and what Israel is going to do. Those documents would just found themselves in the public domain. I mean, it is so pathetic what is going on with Harris and her desperation to win Michigan, her desperation to sell Israel down the drain. There's no question about that. That's exactly what's being done. Forgive me for saying that, for me personally, it's not about politics. I've supported Democrats, Republicans. When I was a Democrat, I supported Republicans. As a Republican, I have no problem supporting Democrats. And I recognize, that I wish Donald Trump would not say some of the things that he said. But I got to tell you that in 2016, I did not support Donald Trump because of the things that he said back then. But there's only one thing that happened that really changes everything. He became president of the United States. And he was a darn good president in spite of some of the things he said that, I wish he would not have said. The economy was in great shape. There's no question about that. Everyone did better. The Latino community, the Black community, everyone did better under Donald J. Trump. No question about it. And what's going on the border that is really destructive to America, out of control, just pathetic. We need to care about that. Law and order in this country. The Democratic Party, unfortunately, and I am not saying this about every Democrat, but this is what, if you look at major cities in this country run by Democrats, I wish the political leaders of these different places would be as concerned about the victims of crime as they are concerned about the perpetrators. There's much more emphasis on the perpetrators. I mean, look, we have a situation here in New York. People get arrested 20, 30 times. Do you know that? I mean, I just want to point this out because this is part of the sickness of the Democratic Party today. 60%, there was a report that came out a couple of weeks ago, that 60% of the people who use the New York City transit system do not pay their fare. Because why should they pay their fare? I mean, I don't know why the other 40% do pay their fare. They're not concerned. Nothing is going to happen to you. The issue of anti-Semitism, what's going on? We all read the ADL report that just came out. 10,000 reported incidents of Jew hatred, hundreds of cases of assault. destruction of property, something we have never, it's almost as bad and maybe even worse than Nazi Germany in the early 1930s. That's what's going on in this country. And one of the things the Harris-Biden administration has been fabulous at, talk, 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 and talk is cheap, and no results, no consequences. What's happening at universities? What has the federal government done with a single university where property was destroyed, where Jewish students were afraid to walk on the campus, where Jewish rights were being violated? Nothing. But the most important issue, of course, is the well-being of Israel. And Donald Trump, for the 4 years that he was president, and I don't see how anyone can deny this, in terms of the relationship between the United States and Israel, there is no president that, when people say to me, to me, he was the best president ever in terms of that relationship. And when people ask me who was the second best president or the third best president, my answer is Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Based on the facts, not on the rhetoric, not on things that we don't like that Donald Trump says or some things that he even does. What was his relationship to Israel? How do the people, by the way, how do the people of Israel feel about Donald Trump? By the way, how do they feel about him right now? The polls indicate in Israel, right, center, left, 75% of the people of Israel want to see Donald Trump get reelected. I wonder why. I wonder why they're not concerned about. By the way, the people who are supporting Donald Trump, the first group of people that are supporting Donald Trump, whether it's the Orthodox community, it's the pro-Israel community, it's the community that cares deeply, where Israel is one of the most important issues. Most Jews do not have Israel as the top 5 issues, or maybe even not even the top 10. They're more concerned about abortion. They're more concerned about many other things, and that is absolutely fine. But I care deeply about the relationship between Israel and the United States. And this administration, Harris and Biden, have betrayed the relationship with Israel on an ongoing basis. Hamas, Hezbollah, they were depending on Harris to do the job, to call for a ceasefire. They've been calling for a ceasefire for months, and let Hamas continue to exist and Hezbollah. So, it's just, there is no question, unless you are just one of these loyal Democrats, or you have an obligation to the Democratic Party, or you're a sellout.
But I think
and
that's
I'm not talking about anyone on this program.
Majority of Democrats.
I'm not talking about anyone on this program. But the bottom line is that if you care about the well-being of Israel, I admit Donald Trump is so far from perfect. Harris doesn't even register with me. Anyone who looks at Harris and thinks that she is going to be a strong leader, anyone who trusts Harris with the relationship, when it comes to Israel, Israel cannot afford to lose one time. That just cannot happen.
We're going to have to break right now, but I'm going to let Jerry respond to it. And I think majority of American Jews are in the Democratic camp, no matter what. And I think the polls will show that even on election day. We'll pick up on this topic when we come back. Our guest, you just heard of former Assemblyman Dov Hikind, former Democrat, now Republican, heads a group of Americans Against Anti-Semitism, former talk show host here on the Talkline Network. Jerry Goldfeder, very respected election attorney involved in politics here in New York, worked with a lot of elected officials in the Democratic Party. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981. Please call us with your questions and comments at 212-769-1925. That's 212-769-1925. Or email us at zevbrenner@gmail.com.
And we're back. Jerry Goldfeder, a very respected election lawyer in New York City. He's been doing it for over 40 years. He knows all the rules. Very prominent Democrat, committed Jew. Assemblyman Dov Hikind used to be a Democrat, now he's a Republican. And of course, Jerry is supporting Kamala Harris, and Dov Hikind is supporting Dov Hikind. We'll get to your phone calls in just a few moments. Jerry, I want you to respond to Dov. And do you think that Donald Trump was good for Israel in the 4 years that he was in office?
Well, so first of all, I listened pretty carefully to Dov, and I always like listening to Dov. Many years ago, I represented him, so I know of his good works. But his presentation was an ad hominem, really. When you think about October 7th, we're glad that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were in the White House. They stood up for Israel like no president ever did. And for some reason, Dov, you didn't mention that. And the money that we've given Israel and the materiel, weapons that we've given Israel has been unmatched by any other administration. Unfortunately, it's necessary, and we've done it. The United States has done it. And so that shouldn't be discounted. Having said that, the rise of anti-Semitism is been terrible. It's been greater than it's been ever in this country, and nobody's in favor of that. So I don't understand why Dov or anybody else would pin that on this administration. It just doesn't make sense. Look, the issue here is, to use Dov's word, is he doesn't like some of the things Donald Trump has said. Well, some of the things that Donald Trump has said really needs to be paid attention to. He has been very clear that he characterizes people who disagree with him as, quote, the enemy within this country. And he has promised to go after people. He has promised to investigate them, to indict them, to jail them. In other words, he is going to have a Justice Department that acts on his behalf against Americans who happen to disagree with him. That's not the country that I grew up in. That's not the country anybody here who is listening has grown up in. And really, we need to think about what the rule of law means and what it means for the Jewish community and other communities, that when the rule of law breaks down, we get persecuted. The reason we have been so successful in this country is because it is, as I said before, a pluralist country where we have so many rights under the Constitution. Trump doesn't believe in the Constitution. He has said so. And that's dangerous. It's dangerous for the Jewish community. It's dangerous for other marginalized communities and communities who are not marginalized now, but will be if we disagree with his policies.
Jerry, I want to get to some fun before I do so. Do you think that he was very good for Israel? Those 4 years?
Zev, can I just, you asked a question of Jerry.
And my answer.
Let
me finish.
Okay, what's the answer?
I'll give you the answer. I mean, he was fine, but what does that mean? He was fine. He was not a president that attacked Israel. But can you compare with what Joe Biden did on October 7th? I don't think so.
Okay, you gotta be kidding.
And by the way, just a second. And I'm trying to make a bigger point here, which is that it's really important to have a much broader view when we're talking about who the president is. And it's extremely critical to think about who favors our constitutional democracy, who favors a pluralist democracy in this country, who favors the rule of law versus who favors jailing people who disagree with them, who favors ripping up the Constitution. There's a reason why his former attorney general, his former chief of staff, and dozens of people who worked very closely with him have characterized him as someone who's extremely dangerous, not to mention incompetent, but extremely dangerous for our Republican form of government, small r, our democratic institutions. That should be the most important issue for every community, but particularly the Jewish community. We have suffered in other regimes in history when the rule of law has broken down. That should not happen here.
Zev, the rule of law in this country has broken down already. I mean, does anybody notice what's going on in this country the last 4 years under the Harris-Biden administration? I mean, who are we kidding? There's no law and order in this country, starting with the border and what's going on the borders and how that affects Americans in terms of crime and many other issues. But Zev, you asked the question, and we finally got a little bit of an answer. Trump was okay. I mean, that is, I got to tell you, that says it all. Trump was okay. Every president prior to Trump, Democrat and Republican, pledged to move the embassy to Jerusalem. They all lied. They were all dishonest, Democrats and Republicans. But Donald Trump, the guy who doesn't talk so nice, and the guy we're so concerned about, he's the guy that actually kept his word and moved the embassy. But that's just a minor thing, really, not a big deal. And many of the other things that he did. You've had so much time to talk, so there's no point in interrupting me. Really, the Abraham Accords. That's not a big deal. I mean, come on, every president makes deals with Arab nations and Israel. That's not a big deal. I mean, Jerry, for you to say it got schlepped out of you to say, yeah, he was okay, he didn't criticize Israel, when every other president, by the way, has. We're not even going to talk about the Golan Heights. We're not going to talk about the ongoing relationship and what was going on for 4 years where the people of Israel, 90% of them, 90%. But, what do the people of Israel know? They don't really know. And I got to tell you, Jerry, on October 7th, October 8th, when the president of the United States spoke the way he did after October 7th, I had tears in my eyes. We felt like, wow, Biden, great, super. That was day one, and day two, day three. But let's look at the whole picture, what has happened this past year, how this administration has undermined Israel. What about the shipments of arms to Israel that have been held back? And I'm not talking just about the 2,000-pound bombs, but many other. They play politics with Israel when it comes to Israel's survival. That is just a fact of life. This is not about being a Democrat or Republican. Israel is all we have as Jewish people, for God's sake. I love this country. I treasure this country. But Israel is what we have. And this administration has played with the well-being of the people of Israel, the state of Israel, undermining its elected representative. Those are just facts of life. So yes, Jerry, he was wonderful on day one and day two. But what has happened the rest of the year? The constant I mean, let's remember that Harris and Biden told Israel not to go into Rafah. They threatened Israel in terms of going into Rafah. Do you remember the words that were used by the administration? And Sinwar was just, eliminated in Rafah. I mean, this administration, unfortunately, and only for one reason, by the way, and we all know that reason. It's called politics. So if you have to stab Israel in the back, betray Israel, but you got to be careful about how you do it, because there are Jews who care about the well-being of Israel, even Democrats.
We have some phone calls coming in and want to take them. So, Jerry, you want to respond for 30 seconds to Dov, and then I'm going to...
Jerry, I want to say one thing about Jerry.
He's a great guy.
You are a very loyal Democrat, straight to walking to a gas chamber.
I beg your pardon? What did you just say?
Well, you heard what I said. The Democratic Party is disaster for the Jewish people today, unfortunately, with everything going on, the radicalization of the Democratic Party. You just made a comment, anti-Semitism. Like, what could they do? What could the administration do? Well, if they can't do anything, they shouldn't be in office.
What did you say about the gas chamber?
Clarify.
I said,
what did you say?
Let me repeat it, that the policies of the Democratic Party and the silence of so many people in the Democratic Party about what's going on leads to people going to Auschwitz. That's what I said.
Okay, well, so look, we're obviously dealing with a quote-unquote argument that's a little unhinged at this point. The argument...
I know those are... because you disagree with what I said, you start using language, ugly language, unhinged. What else do you have? What else do you have?
The argument...
Let Jerry respond.
What else? You're a loyal Democrat. You represent Democrats. I get it. I understand. You cannot support any Republican.
Okay,
I get it. I understand where you're coming from, Jerry.
This is ludicrous. This is just ludicrous. I said your argument is unhinged.
Oh, really? Is that your opinion?
To say that,
or is that fact?
Dov, I'll let you. Okay, go ahead.
To equate Democratic Party politics or any public official's politics with an inevitability to the gas chamber is the most egregious kind of argument on behalf of Donald Trump's candidacy that I've ever heard. And so the only thing I can say about that is I think you've lost your way. You have your position, you have your analysis of what's good for America, what's good for Israel. We disagree, that's fine, but I think you went overboard. And my general point here is that what's good for the Jewish community is a country that abides by the rule of law and has a leader and a set of leaders who also abide by the rule of law and the Constitution. Once our democratic institutions are destroyed or compromised in a way that Donald Trump has promised to do, then the Jewish community is at risk, as well as our other communities. And I think that is the takeaway that I want our listeners and viewers to hear. Whether you agree with the point that Dov has made with regard to the most important issue is Israel, or you agree with my point that as Americans, we have to care, as American Jews, we have to care about Israel, but we have to care about the Jewish community as we have to care about the entire American community, and being run by somebody who promises to destroy the rule of law in this country. And I think that should be our takeaway.
But the Jewish community is under attack now, under this administration, like never before. And they have issued reports in the White House. They've had speeches. Harris's husband is the Jew who goes out and makes speeches. But what have they done? What have they done with regard to universities? What have they done? Nothing. Talk is cheap.
Okay, Jerry, and then we're going to break. I
just want to say to talk about Doug Emhoff as, quote, the Jew in that sarcastic tone that you just used is really reprehensible, Dov.
Really? And how does the administration use the Jew Emhoff? He's the court Jew who plays the role of making them kosher, but they're not kosher. They're not kosher.
If
views expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of AM 620 WSNR or its management.
This is AM 620 WSNR, Jersey City.
Go on, and then we're going to break.
City.
Okay, we're going to.
Just wanted to make the point about if you ever heard Doug Emhoff talk about his Jewishness, you know that it's genuine, you know that it's sincere, and this attack on him is something that I don't expect from you, Dov. I expect it from Donald Trump, but I don't expect it from you.
Okay,
he's meaningless. He really is. In fact, he's counterproductive because it's all talk and no action.
But by the way, Jerry, he has non-Jewish children who support the Palestinian cause. They're pro-Hamas. So that's unfortunate, but that's the case, that his kids are pro-Hamas and they're pro the demonstrations that are taking place. That's been reported in the media. We're speaking with Jerry Goldfeder, a top election lawyer. He's a part of the Democratic Party, been over 40 years. Dov Hikind, former Assemblyman, was in the Democratic Party, now is a Republican. And we're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Talkline.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
And we're back. Jerry Goldfeder, a prominent attorney in New York, been 40 years, election attorney, former Assemblyman Dov Hikind, Republican, first a Democrat, now a Republican, head of Americans Against Anti-Semitism. We have a lot of calls, so let's please be succinct and to the point. Let's go to Judy in Brooklyn, waiting over 40 minutes. Judy, your question or comment to our guest. Go ahead, Judy.
Hi. I listened very carefully to Jerry, and right away at the beginning, I was waiting for this because I couldn't believe it came out of his mouth. I was waiting for something really, really interesting.
But the stuff that came out, I've got to tell you, Jerry, you have bought into the echo chamber media lies and cover-ups. I have news for you. First of all, you go back and look at President Trump's statement. He is pro-Constitution. He is against those that commit fraud against the Constitution, which the Constitution is against, okay? It's the fraud part. It's the part where they use the Constitution in a fraudulent way. That's what he was saying. He is pro-Constitution. Go back. You're a lawyer. Go read his statement. You'll find out that what I'm telling you is the truth.
Go ahead, Judy. Let's be succinct.
Hold on. He is the poster boy for rule of law. I've got news for you. Kamala, she is the pro-crime candidate, plus she is part of the anti-Israel squad, okay? She raised funds for the 2020 rioters, criminals that murdered, okay? She encouraged the rioters on television, okay? She's the one that is against ICE. She's the one that brought in illegals by the millions invading our borders and poisoning.
So your question for Jerry is,
No. I am answering all his lies. And guess what? Cover up for what? Are you kidding me? What about the corrupt lawfare going after a candidate for president and a former president? All the stuff that's been going on. What about the lies with the 2.5 years of lies to the American public with Russian collusion, with all the stuff that's going on? And I got news for you. Kamala, she dissed Netanyahu at the speech. Vice president, she should have been there. You know what she went? She went to an abortion clinic. She has said to Muslims that they are attacked the most. Bold lie. And by the way, you take...
Judy, 30 seconds more. We have other people waiting.
Okay. She's a Marxist communist, and she's pro-Islamist against Jews and Israel, okay? So, Jerry, I have news for you. I don't know where you've been around. The crime is rampant. Everything is crazy. This is called Kamala with Biden and Kamala and this other white wolf. This is team crazy, team insanity.
Okay, I'm gonna let Jerry respond too, because we have a lot of people calling. But I appreciate your call and I appreciate your sentiments. I think, here's interesting: the majority of American Jews are going to vote Democratic no matter what. That's going to be the facts, and you're going to see that on election day. But anyway, go ahead, Jerry.
You may be a very good person, but you have no idea what you're talking about.
So you disagree with Judy?
I should say so.
Okay. Well, listen, but the facts is that things have changed, and listen, the last 4 years.
Just a second, Zev. Don't try to sanitize what she said. She doesn't know what she's talking about.
She represents a lot. I've heard this argument from many different people. Dov will probably
I've heard it
from
Trump. I've heard it from Trump.
And by the way, during the 4 years, he didn't do the things that he's being accused of subverting rule of law. Has not happened. And I listen, whoever you're going to have.
No, you're absolutely. And so now, Sal, you've said that, but you're absolutely wrong. The reports that have been issued by Congress and the Department of Justice and the filings in court and the court decisions have been very clear that the rule of law has been subverted by him and lawyers who work for him and advocates who support him. They did it in 2020. They've been doing it. And you can pretend that has not occurred. You could pretend that he doesn't really mean what he's saying. But if, God forbid, he wins, we're going to see a very different country based upon what he has said and what he and his people have done.
I'm going to let Dov chime in, and we have a lot of calls. Dov, 30 seconds.
I just want to make a comment. Look, Judy said what she said. I agree with some of it. Other parts I don't care for, to be very honest about it. But let me tell you a sentiment that I hear more and more. And I just want to share a story, very brief, of a woman who called me, a total stranger. She described herself as an elderly person from Queens, New York. And this is the question she asked me, total stranger. How will we know when it's time to leave? She expressed her concerns about what's going on in this country with anti-Semitism. And she wanted me to answer, will someone notify us it's time to leave? That is the kind of stuff, unfortunately, sadly, that we are faced with after 4 years of this administration. I mean, people asking, is there a future for Jews in this country? It's something you never, ever heard if you go back 5, 6 years ago. And there's no question that the Harris-Biden administration have contributed to that by not doing what needs to be done.
Let me just say something about this. I agree that the kind of anti-Semitism that we've had is just outrageous, egregious, and very frightening. But let's not pin it on the Biden administration. Let's pin it on the Christian nationalists. Let's pin it on the people on the so-called left that really have a distorted view of our country and of the Jewish community. Let's just not, and it's a very serious
problem.
Jerry, you deal with facts. You're a lawyer, but what you just said is just completely not true. The acts of hate that are being committed in this country today, I know it was a favorite for Democrats years ago to talk about all the anti-Semitism coming from the right, but that is not the case. The hate, the attacks, the physical assaults, the destruction of property are coming predominantly 85%, according to studies, from the left.
I said that it was coming from
Ben
both.
Omar and AOC and so many others. That's where it's coming from. Now, there are problems on the right. We know that. But the reality, the fact, I know you are interested in facts. Overwhelmingly, it's coming from the left, not from the right.
I said that, and I have I have friends and relatives who are in universities, and what's going on, what went on last year, although it's not going on to such a degree this semester, is just outrageous, and it needs to be stopped. But what I said was,
what has Harris and Biden
but don't pin
done?
it. But don't
what have they
pin
done
it on
about
the
it?
Biden.
Tell me what
Don't
they've
pin
done
it on the
about it.
administration. Don't pin it on the administration. I think that's pretty fallacious, to tell you the truth.
Why? Why?
The problem is,
wait a second.
problem is,
Have any federal funds been withheld from any university in this country because of the violation of the civil and human rights of Jewish students? Has there been any action on the part of the federal government? I can answer that very simply, no, nothing. So who do we blame that? Who do we pin it on? Donald Trump? He's responsible for the last 4 years? Or is it the people who run this country on a federal level? And that is Harris and Biden. They've done nothing to address what's going on college campuses except talk about it.
Well, I think that's a misrepresentation.
But for the Jerry, funds
so
be
tell me what they've done. Tell me what they've done, Jerry. Tell me. Money from Let's talk about facts. What have they done?
They have, in the strongest possible terms, have condemned the anti-Semitism that has gone on our campus.
What have they done? What have they done? Condemning is simple. It takes a moment. Condemning. I condemn. What have they done to make a change, to have an effect?
You mentioned federal funds. You can't just withdraw federal funds. You, as a former legislator,
what have they done? Okay, they can't do it overnight. But have they made any moves to do it?
Let Jerry respond then.
Okay. You, as a former legislator, know that funds that have been allocated to public institutions, not-for-profit institutions, for-profit institutions, they can't just be withdrawn on a dime. You know that. And don't mislead the listeners into thinking that because that hasn't occurred, that means the Biden administration has caused this kind of anti-Semitism. That's just ridiculous.
So, Jerry, have they started any action towards that? I know they can't do it overnight. I know that. But have they started?
You know that, so
can
why
you
would
tell
you
me
say that?
one action that is in progress right now?
I'm not aware of what.
No, there aren't any. I've checked. I know.
No,
there aren't.
Well,
okay,
why not? Fine.
Anyway,
why not? Why haven't they done anything?
Interesting question. Dov, let's squeeze in one phone call before we break. I believe we have Stan in Forest Hills, also been very patient waiting. Stan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, your question or comment?
First of all, I found the whole conversation to somewhat pathetic as far as what Mr. Hikind has said. You made a comment. Let me ask you, Mr. Hikind, do you want to leave this country and go to Israel and live? Is that what do you have that?
No, I love this country.
I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, wait, excuse me. You asked me a question, right?
Dov said he's staying here. But
he asked me a question. He doesn't want to hear the answer.
Okay.
Well, let me wait. You asked me a question. I love this country.
Hold on. Dov is responding to you.
You ask a question. You got to let me answer. You got to be patient. I love this country. I am deeply, earlier when I spoke about Donald Trump, I didn't mention Israel. It was the last thing I mentioned. I talked about what's going on in this country in terms of the borders, in terms of crime, and on and on. I mean, so I love this country, and I'm very, very concerned about the future of this country. And anti-Semitism is, of course, an issue that we all need to care about.
Okay, Stan, your final question for Dov.
Were you upset when Mr. Trump opened his mouth and said if the election he loses, he would blame somewhat of the Jews for it if they didn't vote for him? Did you like that moronic, idiotic comment by him?
No, I didn't like it at all. How do you like that? Am I surprising you? No, I didn't like it, and I will do everything in the world to vote for Trump because the choice is Harris or Trump. We don't have a third choice. And Harris
but
is a disaster for America.
But Stan raises,
period.
But Stan's point is that's just the kind of trope that exacerbates anti-Semitism, and everybody knows that.
No, look, doesn't take much guts.
Look, wait
a minute, it doesn't take much guts. And negotiating a deal with countries that were never really enemies to begin with doesn't take much guts. But it takes guts to deal with Iran. It takes guts to sit down with Syria.
You've got to be kidding. You have got to be kidding.
We're in the situation we're in with them.
Let me publicly thank Harris and Biden right now for giving tens of billions of dollars to Iran so they can help Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. Let me thank Harris and Biden. The gentleman just mentioned something about negotiating with Iran. Is he kidding? Where's he living? On the moon?
In the 4 years, he did nothing. He sat by, didn't talk to them, and that's why they're near an atomic bomb. I wish he would have spoke to them, even yelled at them, but he did not. He figured, no, we're not going to do anything. I didn't like what President Biden did with the money, but for not talking to them for 4 years, they are...
Wait, you don't like what Biden did? You should hate what Biden did and Harris. Supplying the money, could carry out the massacre of October 7th.
Anyway, I appreciate your phone. We're going to have to break. But by the way, the fact is that Iran is a sponsor of terrorism. The fact that monies have been allowed to flow to them in the hundreds of millions of dollars range have emboldened Iran and have given support to Hamas and Hezbollah. And that's part of the problem we're facing today, is that they have hundreds of millions of dollars at their disposal. And despite that, Israel's done a very, very good job.
That is a problem, but you do know, of course, that the Israeli government, for their own reasons, funneled quite a bit of money to Hamas. You know that.
Well, through Qatar, $30 million a month was funneled from Qatar to Hamas. So they thought they can buy them off.
And that turned out to not be so smart by the Israeli government, and we're paying the price for that.
No, that's funny. That is really funny. We're paying the price for what Israel permitted.
I don't think it's funny at all
to do, but not with the Biden administration. By the way, you know how many billions of dollars were given to Iran? Do you know how many billions? Does anybody want to guess how many billions?
So just a second. So does that mean you're ignoring the point that the Israeli government funneled money to Hamas?
No, I don't ignore anything. The people of Israel are going to have an election. I'm answering the question. The people of Israel are going to have an election.
All of us have
and the people will decide whether Bibi Netanyahu, whether they like his policies, whether he made mistakes, and they will vote. And that's the same thing we're going to do in America. And this administration supplied tens and tens, not hundreds of millions, tens and tens of billions of dollars, money that went to Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, so they could bomb Israeli cities. That's simple. Thank you, Biden, Harris.
John, we're going to have to break, and we have a lot of people calling, so if you're on the line, please be patient. Former Assemblyman Dov Hikind is our guest, Democrat, now Republican. Jerry Goldfeder, 40 years, top election lawyer, stalwart in the Democratic Party. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
And we're back. Jerry Goldfeder, top election lawyer, Democrat in New York. Dov Hikind, former Assemblyman, Democrat, now Republican, former talk show host. We're taking some of your phone. We're going to get to some of your emails as well. Saul in Brooklyn, thank you for patiently waiting. Your question for our guest. Go ahead, Saul.
Yes, first I want to say I absolutely agree with the Assemblyman. This discussion tonight, this is a time of a tremendous danger to Israel. Their existence is threatened. they're being attacked from all over by Hamas and by Hezbollah and by Iran. All right, and every time, and then Netanyahu is very wise not to consult with President Biden, because whenever he consults with him, Biden tells him, don't do this, don't do that. All right. The latest thing is, don't be too tough on Iran. Don't go after their nuclear. Don't go after their oil. Every time he speaks to him, it's what he shouldn't do. All right. And thank God, Benjamin Netanyahu did not consult with the Democrats and with Biden on what he needs to do to get rid of these terrorists, because it never would have happened. All right.
And we asked you an interesting, good question. Let me let Jerry, that question was directed to you. Let me just amplify the question a little bit. It came out recently that the administration said that if Israel doesn't provide more humanitarian aid, they're going to cut off weapons. They've threatened this on numerous occasions. And the onus seems to be on Israel to be the ceasefire, when Hamas is really the ones who, the weaker party, they're actually the ones who should be giving in. And yet the administration seems to be pushing Israel for that ceasefire. And right now, humanitarian aid threatened to cut it off with weapons from Israel if they don't improve the situation.
Well, there's no question that Israel is in an existential crisis, and I agree 100% with that. And I also believe that Israel needs to do what it believes it's in its best interest in order to sustain its existence. And
but don't the administration making it more difficult for them? Or isn't it the administration making it more difficult for them to do so?
Well, let's put it this way: the comments that have been made have yet to interfere with our giving of aid and material to Israel. And I think that that's appropriate, that we continue to support Israel in terms of money and in terms of material, so that they can continue fighting for their lives. And I think that that's the right way of looking at it.
Zev, can I say something on that?
Yes, go ahead, Dov.
Okay. I just spent 6 weeks in Israel, came back recently, and had an opportunity to be up north, barbecue for Israeli soldiers in Kiryat Shimona, et cetera, et cetera. I met with military people on different levels, and they made it very clear to me privately that the United States government, the Harris-Biden administration, have held up a variety of weapons that were supposed to be sent to Israel on an ongoing basis, pressuring Israel. That is a fact. That is what we're talking about here. And that's who Harris is. And why are they doing this? I mean, they're trying to play this game to placate the radicals in the Democratic Party. That's, by the way, they're not being placated anyway. But that's exactly what they're doing. They're playing with Israel's well-being, holding back. This is a friend. This is an ally, as the person pointed out, every Monday and Tuesday. You know, the United States, unfortunately, does not have a great record in winning wars in recent years, in recent decades. But they are so freaking involved in telling Israel what to do, when to do it, what not to do, literally on a regular basis, undermining the government and telling Israel what to do. That is not a real friend. You give and you take. That's what the Harris-Biden administration has been doing for the past 10 months. And the election, that's really what it's all about. It's about winning the radicals in the Democratic Party who are upset. Period. It's about Michigan. It's about Minnesota. Let's admit that, for God's sake. I mean, who are we fooling?
Jerry, would you say that the way American Jews are going to vote, where you have Jews who support Israel are going to vote for Donald Trump, and Jews who are more involved with abortion rights and other issues are going to vote for Kamala Harris? Would that be a fair assessment?
I think the entire Jewish community cares about Israel, even people who are unaffiliated. There's obviously different levels of support, but Israel is very important to all of us who are Jewish living in the United States. And what the election in the United States is about is about the future of the United States. And I can't emphasize that enough. The issues that Dov has raised and this particular caller has raised with regard to the way we have been conducting our foreign policy with Israel, there are issues. There are always issues in foreign policies, and sometimes it's extremely important to an individual because we have a special relationship with a particular country. I mean, the Ukrainians may feel that we're not doing enough for them as well, and they may feel that we're trying to interfere with the way they're conducting their war. And our interests are important to us. But this election is about our country. And this election is about whether or not we will have a president who believes in the Constitution, who believes in the rule of law. And as I've said before, and it bears repeating, it's extremely important for communities such as the Jewish community to live in a democratic in a country with democratic institutions that are sustained. And when Donald Trump talks about ripping up the Constitution, and when he talks about weaponizing his own Justice Department and going after and locking up people who disagree with him, we should all be worried because it could be the next person today. It could be us tomorrow.
But, Donald Trump says that the way the Justice Department went after him, it's after him today. They can be after you tomorrow. That has been politicized. And let me read a letter from Joy in Manhattan. Mr. Goldfeder says that Trump has promised to undermine the Constitution. But let's look what Biden Harris has done to undermine the Constitution. They have politicized the Department of Justice. They've ignored the Constitution at the border.
Well, of course, that's not true. And I addressed this earlier. This Department of Justice under Merrick Garland, under the Attorney General, who has more integrity than most former judges and judges sitting on the bench today. They've indicted Hunter Biden. They've indicted a Democratic senator from New Jersey. They've indicted the Democratic mayor of the city of New York. A Justice Department that's political would not have done that. Bill Barr, who used to be the Attorney General under Donald Trump, says that Donald Trump should not be reelected, should not be elected again. A lot of his people who work very closely with him say that he should not be elected because he doesn't represent American values. Look, I've made my points. Unfortunately, I have to go.
No, I bet you. But let me say this final question. Councilman Jim Gennaro on this program said that the reason why they went after Mayor Eric Adams because he was opposed the administration regarding the migrants, and that's why, in his opinion, he's a Democratic councilman in Queens. He said that's why they went after Eric Adams. I'm just repeating what he said, and others have said similar things too.
That's odd that he said it. That's what Eric Adams said. It doesn't make any sense. The people in the Justice Department are professionals. The Public Corruption Unit in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District are professionals. Excuse me. And that's just a nonsensical argument. It really is. So I just want to say, because I have to go, I've listened to Dov, I've listened to you, Zev. It's really been a pleasure having this conversation. This is all extremely important to all of us on a number of levels, and I appreciate the ability to exchange ideas here. There's disagreement, but that's what this country is all about. And frankly, God bless America.
And that's why we have an open forum so people can discuss a different variety of opinions and oppose each other, but do it in a civil way. So, Jerry.
Jerry, let me just say before Jerry leaves, I very much appreciate who you are, and I know you. You're a good guy, and I really mean that. And the conversation tonight gets a little heated, and because it means so much to all of us, to you and to me, and with God's help, everything will be good. We're living in very difficult times.
Yes, we are. So have a healthy and happy New Year at Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry Goldfeder, and to Alice, and he's the director of the Fordham Law School's Voting Rights and Democracy Project, top election lawyer in New York for over 40 years. Thank you for joining us.
He's the best, by the way.
He's terrific. He's marvelous. I know him. He's a supermensch. And
thank you. And you make a wonderful breakfast.
Thank you. We enjoyed having you. We'll have you over again. It's a wonderful, wonderful guest to have. I thank you, Jerry. Let me thank you, former Assemblyman Dov Hikind, who actually has billboards up in Pennsylvania urging people to vote for Donald Trump. So thank you. Any closing thoughts?
No, I appreciate the conversation, and this is. People talk about all elections being critical. I think this one more than ever. And I don't look at Donald Trump as the Mashiach, the Messiah, that he wins, everything will be okay, everything will be wonderful. But I think looking at the two candidates, there literally is no choice but to vote for Donald Trump and to hope for the best. That's all I can say. And also, very, very important, the House of Representatives, that it remain with the Republicans, and that the Senate turn to the Republicans as well. Maybe we can start addressing the out-of-control situation in this country, from the border to anti-Semitism to crime, the economy, and so on and so forth. Zev, thank you so much for having me on.
Look forward to having you back in regards to Shani. I know you're on vacation, so I'll let you get back to your scenic and enjoy the rest of the holiday.
Thank you so much.
Dov Hikind here on the Talkline Network, together with Jerry Goldfeder.